What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Rapflix Radio. I'm so happy to have you back, and I'm so happy to be back. And today's episode is the continuation of the 5 Fears series. I know this has taken longer than I anticipated as far as release-wise, and I do apologize for that. But today we're diving into fear of rejection. And this is the third out of the 5 main fears that I wanted to cover. And I believe this goes beyond sort of sport or, online fitness, obviously with sales. Fear of rejection is a big thing. But within elite performance, we have to consider every part of our lives. And if something's off, if we're fearful to go after something in one area, it might bleed over into another area. And that's why I basically want to take this episode to really share with you some of my takes, my philosophy on rejection, and hopefully I can reframe this to help you, increase your sales, go after that starting spot with more sort of veracity, maybe go after that significant other potential that you've been putting off or been fearful to ask out. Because if 2020's taught us anything, it's we have one life, and it's sort of frightening how easily it can be taken away, and how precious it is. So if I can do anything to sort of liven up that one life that we all have, that's kind of why I'm here. So if we can get on the other side of rejection and get to the thing that we really want, that's meant for us, then that's a life well lived. Before we start, if you haven't already, subscribe either to iTunes or YouTube, whichever you're consuming this on. And just want to take this opportunity to thank you again for this is, I believe, episode 30. If you've been listening since day one, I thank you so much. If this is your first episode, welcome. This is the Elite Performance Podcast, where we're going to cover a lot of mental conditioning. That's what I wanted to be known for right out of the gate, but we're going to dive into, like you've seen with a few episodes, fitness, nutrition, sleep, recovery, all these things that combine into an elite performer. And we're not just isolating fitness or nutrition. We're looking at the grand scheme of everything and what the research shows us, and what sort of top performers have done with their lives and have actually gotten results. So that's what this platform is. It's sharing both of those things, and hopefully an entertaining way. So we're going to dive into what is rejection, what is the fear of rejection. So for me, it's the loss of acceptance, potential love, or belonging. If you listen to the last episode, I was talking about community and how evolutionary psychology, we were talking about tribes and how we want to fit in. And, I have imagined this best case scenario, specifically with relationships. I'm just one of these Enneagram 4s who can walk through like, oh, she's pretty. And then, step by step by step, oh, we're married. Oh, we had kid. Like, oh, we're going to die together. Unfortunately, my brain does that. And then when it doesn't happen, or we imagine being embarrassed by hearing no. And I believe it was 2.5 Men where Jake is hesitant to ask out a girl, and Charlie asks, "What are you afraid of?" And Jake says that she'll laugh at me, and, and Charlie says, "Oh, you sweet boy." So that's hilarious. But relationships, business, whatever it is, if we feel like we're not good enough, or what we bring to the table isn't adequate, we feel like there's something wrong with us, when, I'll get to it in a second, it's just not meant to be for that particular individual or that particular organization or that particular person client-wise. It wasn't a good fit from their perspective. It has nothing to do with your value, your self-concept, or sort of the value you bring to the world. It just wasn't meant to be with that isolated incident. So the struggles I've seen with fear of rejection from other people and myself is inadequacy, the downgraded, or to lessen the standard, and a permanent downshift. Um, Say we get rejected. We must not be good enough if we get rejected. I feel worse about myself now than if I didn't take the chance. And that is a fear that I run through my mind too. It's like, well, I'm at this base level of happiness, and if I go after this and I get rejected, am I going to lower that? And is that really something I want to go through currently? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And we really want to get to that point and that level of like permanent happiness where we can go after these things and it doesn't affect us as much. And if this episode can even help you a little bit to do that, then I did my job. The permanent downshift is what I am concerned about. It's the I won't reach for a goal that high ever again for the fear of that pain. And it's okay to take a step back and kind of heal, is probably the best term for it. But I never want you to then say, oh, I'm never going to reach after that ever again. Like, come back, heal, like just like a boxing match. You lost. And I know this is sort of taking it a little more graphically, but you got beat up. Go back to your corner, sort of heal, talk to someone, talk to that trainer, and then when you're ready for the next round, go after it. But don't ever keep yourself and settle for something, because we've seen in studies and research, individuals in community homes, older homes, their number one fear and their number one is regret and not going after the things they really want. And that's what I don't want for you, and that's not what elite performer does. They go after the things they want in all areas of their life. So really the goal of this episode, in overcoming the fear of rejection, is to reframe using last week's episode as a reference when we were talking about sort of the evolutionary psychology of tribes and the fear of other people's opinions, to understanding the value of the rejector, like I was talking about last week. Quick recap, other people's opinions, it was really their perception, their life experience, and their trauma. So you have to understand like and we'll get to the round peg square hole in jello, which I'm really excited about. But understand like they're their own individual with their own experiences, and you are your own individual with your own experiences. And when you attempt to combine them, either professionally or personally, there's a give and take, and I really hate this. There's the woo-woo aspect of energies and all that. And really, I want you to develop self-confidence within yourself. And within my experience, I've had points where, I was on fire and, reaching out to people, and business-wise, let's take a step back. Take a deep breath. Let's start with business. I've never said no to a meeting, which is great when you're first starting out. If you're presented an opportunity and you go ahead with all of them to either gain the reps or just to meet them or things like that. I've never sort of canceled out of fear or never gone after someone who I knew was a perfect fit, but I haven't had the level of aggressiveness to take it to the next level, and that's what I've been working on. So from a business standpoint, I would say my fear of rejection is probably around a 2 or 3. Like, I know I have a viable product within Mind Design Complete, which is my one-on-one performance coaching. I know from the podcast side that I've seen numbers, like I have proof of concept there too. And it's just kind of, for me, bringing myself to a level of overall happiness that I can take on all these things with quality in mind and with bringing my best. And that's what I've been working on for, I would say, 3 to 6 months, honestly. COVID's hit us all differently, but for me, isolation's been interesting. Anxiety's been a little up. I've been trying some different things as far as sleep aids and anxiety and stress management. But from a relation standpoint, that would I would say I have a higher number on, because like business Kyle, these are different identities, right? We have certain different identities within sort of how we intermingle in life, whether that is with our friends, with kind of our peer group, with our mentors. We're the same person, but we kind of show up a little differently. And we have different identities, and that's okay. Alter Ego is a book behind me that says like we should have those things, because we show up with different qualities and standards and ways of communicating that are different in a significant relationship than sort of a casual interaction with an acquaintance, right? So I would say like my fear of rejection is probably like a 7 or 8 on the relationship side. I know like tons of people who are probably at a 10 who, for example, have a hard time messaging first on online dating, for an example. Um, Not there. I can message first. That's okay. It's like if I see someone in person, that's very hard for me to go after that person. And really, this is what I want to get to. It's this round peg. So we have the round peg, and this is the analogy I want to run with today. So we're the round peg, and we're trying to fit into a square hole, and try to ignore the obvious sexual implication that I'm making here. So the round peg wants to go into the square hole, but can't, because they're not they're not compatible. If we don't take the chance to try and fit them together, we're not going to know. The jello is when that round peg that we are isn't fully confident, or isn't fully themselves, or anything like that. So we're going to try and fit that square peg into, or the round peg into the square hole, and it's going to kind of fit. You know what I'm saying? It'll go in a little bit, but it's going to be kind of messy. And then we think that's a fit. A couple months down the road, we find out that it's not, because we weren't authentically ourselves at the beginning, and we kind of not settled, but we weren't our true selves. So we were trying to match up two different shapes, and inevitably we're no farther ahead, like trying to have a relationship with someone who's a square hole and we're a round peg. But we molded ourselves into sort of a lesser density, with jello as the analogy, and we're not fully ourselves, and we're not confident in that individual. So we're going to kind of lessen that, and in the end it's kind of more heartache if you think about it, because you'll go through that relationship and then it'll crumble because it wasn't meant to be in the first place. And but you didn't know that until you took a chance, right? But if you were that round peg and made of wood in that square hole you were trying to fit it in, and you knew that on possibly the first date, then you are no longer wasting either of your time, and you can walk away with confidence knowing, okay, that individual's nice, but they just weren't for me. And it's sort of the same thing within business. You have your values, you have your messaging themes, you have the way that you enjoy communicating, whether that on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a hard ass, if you're someone who not enables but coddles a little more. Some people enjoy that a little more. And that's why content creation is so important, is to show what kind of coach you are through your content. But with the round peg square hole, if you're a deep red, as I use colors to pretty much for an analogy for this. If you're deep red and you're this hard ass push, 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 and a potential client comes to you and they're sort of this blue where they need a lot of reassurance and calming and a lot of attaboys and encouragement and things like that, it's probably not going to be a good fit. unless that individual really needs that. And that's not a perfect analogy, but you understand what I'm saying when I say that. Uh, you know, athletics, this is going to be probably the least fearful, I would say. But I want to skip that acknowledgement. But we do fear like not getting the starting spot. Self-handicapping is when you basically take actions to push yourself further from the goal. And I can go into that a little more if you're interested, but that's kind of straying from the topic. Uh, Fear of rejection is basically you need to be like your full self, and then everything that's meant to be in your life will be there. And I know that's really hard sometimes to understand emotionally, but nod your head if you agree intellectually. So, 3 steps I would say to overcoming this fear of rejection. And first is awareness. Are we setting outcomes and tasks and not doing them? And are we using procrastination as an excuse? Or are we just fearful of being rejected in some sort of fashion? And knowing that instead of, well, I'm just a procrastinator, well, oh, I'm actually fearful of this rejection. Well, let me work on the actual core issue, and then I'll move on and actually do the things I said I was going to do for myself. And that's the biggest thing with elite performance. It's intention and keeping promises to yourself. If you can do those 2 things, you'll be well on your way. Second is shrink your circle of give a shit and upgrade your circle. I believe those people will never reject you in the way that we commonly think about it. They will challenge you to be a better person, but they're never going to reject you. They're going to understand you from a deep level, and that's why having a circle and a tribe is so important. Third is have the vision and purpose. I talk about this probably almost every episode, but if that person, if that potential client doesn't fit with who you're trying to be, who you're trying to grow your coaching company to be, who, for a sport example, teammate, if that's not someone you resonate with, I wouldn't get close to them. Do they fit the person that you're trying to be in this world? And if the answer is no, I wouldn't waste both of your guys' time, because time is precious. And lastly is learn about yourself and love that individual. And this is what I have seen is such a rampant problem. And speaking personally, it's tough too. To truly learn about yourself and to be silent in a room is a lot more difficult than to just sit on your phone, scroll all day, and look through everyone else's story. But if you can learn about yourself, learn what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, and then love that individual, you'll be that really tough square or that round peg that I was talking about earlier. And then you'll find other round holes to, again, the obvious sexual implication of my analogy is staggering, but you'll be able to fit those in, and it'll be a perfect fit, both from a friendship and a relationship standpoint. So when I made that analogy, I'm like, okay, I have to address it more than once. I just think it's funny. But to wrap up here, reframe rejection as an isolated incident that it is, because it really is. If you take a step back, we take the emotion out of it, say it was someone else, and you're trying to give advice to them, it is an isolated incident. If you message someone, or if you had one sales call and it just wasn't a right fit, that was an isolated incident. You would tell your friend, oh, just not do better on the next one, but try again. And don't judge your entire self-concept on the fact that you were rejected by this one person, because their square hole could be made out of jello too. Like, they're not fully themselves. And do you want 2 people who are jello coming together? It's not going to fit at all, and it's just going to be this awful mess. And so we're all working on ourselves in some form or fashion. But I believe it's important to have people, friends or significant other, those who cheer you on, them to have that amount of confidence in themselves as well. And if you do, you're going to attract people that have that as well. So again, guys, I'm always here for questions. Kyle@rapflex.com. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this. And until next time, until next week when we're covering the fear of success. And I'm very excited because it sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. And I'm excited to dive into why it's not. So until next week, guys, have a great weekend.